Here we go.
You ready? All right. This is Aleph, first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, or Aleph Bet. This is the symbol for ox, and we'll move on from there. This is Bet. It also pronounced with a V, so a vet is also it. It means house. And so the Aleph Bet is the power in the house, Hebrew word for father. Beautiful word. Gimel, third letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is our letter, I think it means foot. Yeah, it's the Gimel, or when you have this in words, it's usually referring to motion. So you're reglayim, you're walking with your feet. This is Dalet, fourth letter of the Hebrew, door. It is, we got this little tittle, which is very significant in many applications of the Hebrew Bible. Fourth letter, Dalet, door. Hey, symbol means raised arms, or it means behold. You say behold, you say hine. You know, hine matov umanaim, behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. This is your hey, your fifth letter. The hey is a hey breath word. So when Avram was turned to Avraham, he got the breath of God and he got a new identity and a new name. So very significant when this letter is used in names and words. Sixth letter, Vav, tent peg. It is very significant because it can also mean nail. And so I was sharing with our dear brother, when you have Genesis begins with a bet and Deuteronomy begins with a D, but Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers begin with vavs, because this is the Hebrew word for and. So it was Genesis began and Exodus, and then Leviticus, and then Numbers, and then Deuteronomy. The tent peg, it hangs things on it, or it pierces. So you'll see this vav used quite often in piercing or hanging. This is our Zion, shaped like a weapon, and that's about all I say about that. When you see Zion used in words, it's like tools or weapons. This is our chet. This is our, let's see, this is our eighth letter. Yep, means a wall. This is also, if you spell chet, it is the Hebrew word for sin, because sin creates a wall between you and God. And of course, Ephesians 2 says Jesus has broken down the wall of hostility between us. Tet, which is the ninth letter. It's a basket, or it a lot of times means, let me just give you an example. With, snakes were carried in baskets. It surrounds things. You can tell it's kind of surrounding with a little opening. And it also means to twist. And so you see your tet used in a motion or a twisting of things like Satan is spelled with a tet, not necessarily a tav, is, I think, and just going off the top of my head, because he's a twister. And so that's key with our tet. Yud, smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is the hand. You can see it's kind of shaped like a hand. This is the jot that Jesus refers to in Matthew 5:17. That one jot or the tittle that you saw in the Dalet will pass away until all is performed. The smallest letter, but is extremely significant and important, and it carries the power. I was just reading in Ezra 4 today. It says that when the enemies discouraged the builders of the temple, it says that they weakened their hands. So when your hands are weak, there's no power. But when your hands are strong, like you see the power of God coming. That's the number 10. That's the first letter of God's name. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So Yahweh, or Yahovah in our vernacular. Calf is the palm, sometimes a bent hand, but calf refers to bending or covering or open or blessing. So you open your hands and receive the blessing, or you open your hands to bless. So calf is the bent hand or the palm. Number 20. We'll get to numbers later. Lamed. If you study, you are called a lomed. You are a learner. You are someone is leading you. And this looks like a shepherd's staff because lamed means staff, and if you notice that it is shaped like that. So when you see lamed in many words, it refers to motion or leading or yokes or teaching, and very significant, to hang on to the teachings of the fathers. So mem is the Hebrew word for water, and let's see, this is I think it's the 13th, 12th letter, and you spell mayim with 2 of these and a yud in the middle, because there's power in the water. The power of the water flooded the earth. So when you see mem used, you see it's the word for blood. Blood and water go together. Blood is moist. It's also a pronoun for out of. So when you have in the beginning, you spell that with a bet. But when you say from the beginning or out of the beginning, you would say use that as a mem. So that means out of or from. Nun, Hebrew word for fish or seed. Very significant when you think about Jonah was sent to Nineveh. He was sent to the land of the fish, and rebelling against the Lord didn't go. He was swallowed by the Adag Gadol, or a fish that was big, not a whale. So you see Nun is representing a fish or seed, and it has a lot to do with sons, has a lot to do with action, has a lot to do with life. So life is very key to the Hebrew Bible, and so you see Nun has a seed or a fish symbol. And then you see the samik, which means prop or thorn. Samik is an interesting word, or interesting letter, because you have many words that begin with this, and they relate to grabbing, or this is the first word for hate. It's the first letter for hate. Very significant letter, combining the symbols when that was used. So this is the ayin, this is your ayin, your eye, and when you see the eyes of the Lord roaming to and fro, eyes are usually in plural, and because you have 2 of them, and the ayin is the first letter for servant, and it's the first letter for Hebrew, because the Hebrews were supposed to see God as He really was, and to serve Him as He in fact is. So ayin is a huge letter to remember. Pei or fei, this is the Hebrew word for mouth, and you see that you have, you love the Lord your God, honoring Him with your mouth, your words, and you have many things that have to do with talking and speaking, bad, dirty, things that you shouldn't say. A lot of times begin with pei. And it's also can be Fe, like Yosef. This is the last letter of his name, because he's an increaser, because it never says that Joseph sinned with his mouth, and so you have that symbol in there as well. Tzadi means a man on his side. This is also the word for righteous, tzaddik, or tzaduk, the sons of tzaduk, the sons of Zadok, and it has a lot to do with desiring or trouble, or sometimes mysteries. And you have tzadi, the man on his side. So you can see this symbol used a lot in Ezekiel 4, when Ezekiel is told to lay on his side for all those days to bear the iniquity of the people Israel. So tzadi, the righteous man, laying on his side, bearing the reproach of the nation. Very significant. And Jesus was laid, on the cross, and on each side was a thief. So you see a lot of implications with the righteous being surrounded, or terror on every side. You have Kuf, or it's the rising sun. This is also the letter for needle. So when Jesus said, let a camel or a gimel pass through the eye of a needle, he was referring to the letter gimel is very difficult to pass through, the opening of the kof. And you see that there's always an opening, so a lot of times it has to do with the rising. Kum, when he says Talitha Kumi, rise up, and open yourself up to the rising sun. You have a lot of times where this letter appears in words. It has to do with being the last one, or it has to do with timing, like it's a letter in boker, which means morning. So you see that letter used a lot with those meanings. And Resh, this is the letter for your head. It's also pronounced Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah, the head of the new year. So Resh does not have a dalet, as you see. And you'll see a lot of times in Hebrew where the dalet and the resh are kind of interchangeable, changing the meaning based on that little tittle. But resh is your head, and bereshit, that's the first real word in the beginning, because it's the head of the beginning. So bereshit, resh, spelled out in the word in the beginning, and it's all about the head, because you have bet. Resh is the first two letters of the Hebrew Bible, which is the word for bar, which is the eschatological word for sun. The Aramaic word is bar, the Hebrew word is ben, but when you say the bar enosh, the son of man in Daniel 7, you'll see that it is the head of the house, because bet resh is the son, so Jesus is the son, the head of the house. So resh has extreme power and very significant meaning when you look at where it's placed in what words. And second to last, we have shin, which means your teeth, and it used to look just like your two front teeth. It has a lot to do with devouring or destroying, and like shaber, to cause, to break. You destroy something, shaber. So you have devouring. And, I always used to say you devour things with your teeth. That's why shin is a really interesting letter for meaning devour. Last but not least, one of my favorite letters of all time is the tav. Tav used to look like a cross. And if you would mark someone, like Ezekiel 9:6, you would say you tavad them. So you mark them on the forehead, and then you have Revelation 7:2. Where the servants of God were sealed on their foreheads, and I believe they were sealed with a cross. So this used to look like a cross, evolved over time and changed the shape. But I always look at this letter as being a implication of Jesus the Messiah, the one who was called the Aleph Tav, which you see here. I'm not really sure if that's right to left, this way. Okay. So the Aleph Tav, you have the power and the cross. And Jesus called himself the beginning and the end. Of course, it would be like us saying from A to Z. They would say Aleph Tav. Jesus said, I am the Aleph Tav. In Greek, you would say, I am Alpha and Omega. But if you take the letter Vav, remember that was a nail, and you pierce the Aleph Tav with a nail, that's the Hebrew word for sign. And, there are 7 signs in the Gospel of John. And, one of them was, the last sign in the Gospel of John was the resurrection of Lazarus from the dead. And so death comes, when you pierce the Aleph Tav, but the ultimate sign, he would be as the one who was resurrected. So Aleph Tav, I am the Alpha and the Omega, I am the Aleph and the Tav. Tav, last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it has a lot to do with what they say marking or sealing or covenant. Bereshit ends with this, so you have, a sign and a seal. It's the last word of Brit, which is covenant. Last letter for the word daughter, your daughters of the covenant. So when you see the letter Tav used, it's got a lot of meaning with some of our markings and signs and covenants and seals. Good?
Mm-hmm.